Faith, can you hear me? Faith, can you hear me?
Somebody?
Faith, can you hear me? Please,
Yes,
Sergeant.
Yes, you're
You need,
audible now.
please make me the host because I wanted to go live on YouTube and I can't go as a co-host.
Okay, no problem.
Please go live on YouTube on your side and or you can make me the host, okay?
Okay. Okay, I've done that.
Okay. Yeah, all, and welcome to today's conversation. We are glad that you are able to join us. Let's give the people who will be joining us a bit of like 4 minutes. So we'll start at around 4:10 Kenyan time or East African time or GMT +3. So let's give them 4 minutes. Then at 3:10 East African time, GMT, we'll be able to start. We are grateful that you're able to join us.
Folder. Host. Folders available. YouTube link. Escape YouTube button. Top down. Sign in button. New button. Annotate button. Mute currently. Audio settings button menu. Mute current. Space. Mute currently. Muted. Home. Save button. Those mute. Audio mute.
Thank you all, and thank you for joining us. We are glad to have you. I would like to know if you can hear me. Please let me know. Are you able to hear me?
Can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you. So thank you, and we welcome you to our online conversation, which is we are addressing the intersection of people with disability and climate change, challenges and opportunities. Today's discussion is co-hosted by the Inclusive Climate Change Adaptation for a Sustainable Africa, ICASA, and the Center Minority Rights Development, SEMI-RIDE. Throughout the session, we encourage participants to engage actively and share their insights that promote inclusivity, addressing the challenges faced by individuals with disability in the context of climate change. So we hope to work together to explore the different opportunities for a sustainable solution. This dialogue is part of Her Voice Counts dialogue, an activity being implemented under the Strengthening the Voices of Women with Disability project, where we are strengthening women with disability to actively participate in climate change policies and negotiation. And it's a 3-year project funded by the Africa Climate Change Fund, ACCF, of the African Development Bank. My name is Wamboi Muchaba. I am the program coordinator for ICASA, and I welcome you all to actively participate in these conversations. Kindly note that today's discussion is being recorded and will take approximately 1 hour. The dialogue is also streaming online on YouTube channel. We'll be able to share with you the link after this conversation. We encourage you to tweet this conversation using the hashtag #HerVoiceCounts. We are fortunate to have a French translator and a sign language interpreter with us. If you're from a French-speaking country or an English-speaking country, please use the setting link on your Zoom below to kindly be able to follow the discussion with the language that you prefer. Additionally, we kindly request all participants to mute their microphones as well as turn off their videos so that we're able to see the sign language interpreter as well as be able to hear the French translator. So thank you for your cooperation. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, please type in the comment below. Eric, I see your hand. Can we request maybe you post it in the chat? We request you kindly post it in your chat. We'll be able to give you a chance for the hand. If it's something urgent, just post it in the chat and I'll be able to follow it up with you. Okay, so now to kick off our discussion, let's listen to a YouTube video by Australian Green on we need to talk about disability. Please take a moment to watch the video. For our French-speaking participants, the YouTube captions will be available in French. Please take a moment to watch the video. For our French-speaking participants,
We need to talk about disability. You might hear people say that
let me know if you can hear the video before I go.
We can hear it.
Thank you.
we need to talk about disability. You might hear people say that disability is caused by barriers in society. But what does that actually mean? Well, think about this. If someone who uses a wheelchair can't get into a building because of some steps, is the barrier caused by the person using a wheelchair or by the design of the building? If a blind person can't read the timetable for a train, What's stopping them from getting the information they need? If a child with learning difficulties is struggling in class, is it the child's responsibility to learn in the way they are taught, or the teacher's responsibility to teach in the way that the child can understand? For years, society has viewed disability as a problem that belongs to the disabled person and said that we should focus on fixing that person's impairment.
The social model of disability says that disability results from the way society is organised, rather than by a person's impairment or difference.
There is no right or wrong way to be. We are all different. We are all unique, diverse individuals.
We need to remove the barriers that stop disabled people from participating in society fully, on an equal basis with everyone else. We need to design buildings so that everyone can access them.
We need to ensure information is accessible to everyone so we can all participate in public life.
And we need to ensure that every child has the opportunity to learn and grow into the best person they can be.
When barriers are removed, disabled people can and will be equal in society.
With control over their own lives.
Not to mention all the other groups who benefit from a more inclusive and accessible society.
It's time to talk about disability differently. It's time to build our places and spaces differently. It's time to change attitudes and realise that we are all different and unique, and that an inclusive society is a better society for everyone.
As mentioned in the video, people with disability face challenges. I welcome Mary to switch on her video so that for the sign language interpreter. I think we may have lost her. Mary, let us know if we can see you. Thank you. Are you able to hear us, Mary? Okay, thank you. So, as seen in the video, or as mentioned in the video, people with disability face challenges such as lack of access to education, myths and cultural practices, high poverty level, lack of power and finance, and poor access to information, among others, that are discriminatory and harmful to people with disabilities. Studies have shown that attitudes and structural barriers due to different impairments make people with disability more vulnerable to climate change, violence, and discrimination. Firstly, people with disability, they often encounter discrimination and marginalization in the society, which results in limited access to education, resources, and opportunities. This lack of empowerment and inclusion restrict their ability to engage in policy discussions and advocacy. Secondly, the disability community often faces physical and communication barriers that restrict their mobility and hinder their access to decision-making processes. Many meetings and conferences may not be fully accessible, making it difficult for people with disability to participate. Moreover, existing gender disparities further marginalize them. So different gender norms or different society norms may perceive them as less capable or deserving of participation, contributing to their underrepresentation. So to delve into the challenges and opportunities faced by people with disability, we are honored to have two speakers who will share their personal stories, providing valuable insights. Following their experiences, we will also hear from another speaker who will shed light on the opportunities available to people with disability, drawing from experiences in Kenya and across the region. So we now welcome Paul Mugambi to share on his personal encounter with climate change, a story from a visually impaired person. For questions and comments or any follow-up, please post them in the chat section. So we welcome you, Paul.
Good afternoon, all. My name is Paul Mugambi. I'm African, and I'm wearing some sunglasses, and I'm glad to be here. I come from Disability Sausage Media, a public policy think tank, whereby we have a vision of reducing ableism in order to include everyone in the society. Our Disability Sausage Media has 4 areas of work. That is issue about digital accessibility, climate change, mental health, and disability inclusion and accessibility audits. First of all, I'd like to say that when you look on issues around climate change and issues around technology, whereby I can tell you there's a lot of digital divide in this area when we are discussing issues of climate change, because we know consequences or effects of climate change really affect persons' abilities, who make up the 16% of the world's population. That is 1.3 billion, according to World Health Organization. And this is not a population which needs to be ignored. As a fact, we face 5 major barriers. That is attitudinal, environmental, communication, institutional, and the financial barrier. And these key barriers, when we talk about climate change, comes in terms of how information is passed on, how we are able to access services, and this one really impacts in terms of climate change. And when you look at the issues around climate change and innovation and technology, there is what, as we normally tell people, which there's a new terminology which we are coming up with, which is called techno-ableism. This is an area whereby we find that developers, researchers, academicians are not able, they are really not involving persons' abilities in terms of their products, which can enable persons' ability to access the same information or even environment, just like the way others can be able to access. And when you find the effects of climate change, they really bring a lot of disasters. And we know that in humanitarian world or in the emergency places, there are no warning systems to support these issue around disability and climate change, such that if I'm a visually impaired person, and in case flooding, in case of wind, in case of typhoon, I'm not able to know such information, because most of the products which are available, they are either outdated or they're not even available, or even one cannot afford. Thirdly, I'm also speaking because from the side or aspect that I'm also a first blind innovator in East Africa region, whereby I developed a service utility, which is currently a prototype, and it was well-intentioned to solve such issues around climate change. And also it's a service utility about power, because when you find that most of the time we have these meter boxes, they don't offer information to a blind person. And at the end of the day, through that innovation, which started way during the COVID period, I had stayed without power for more than 3 days and 4 days like that. And then through that initiative, I was able to collaborate with my techno experts to develop a service utility, which could at least enable other people to get the information. And with the right support, I know it can really help even persons without disability, because it is an inclusive design, and it looks in terms of enabling other persons to understand the information. Even the illiterate, we are trying to seek how we can make it more universally designed. Well, at this issue around climate change, there is a lot in terms of access of information. You find sometimes we have what you call non-visual access in terms of accessing information, whereby sometimes people can play instrumental on the television sets, they can play with designs of how how the disaster is occurring. But for a blind person, will just be entertained through that music. So it becomes a major challenge if that information is being passed. When you talk about maybe persons with a neurodiverse disability, whether it is autism, and when they want to access some information, and when you don't have that, what you can call color contrast, or sometimes information which is easy to read, they cannot be able to access any information in regards to climate change. And this poses a big challenge in terms of even evacuation processes, even in terms of accessing other services. Another big example which I can use, as you see with the current maybe rains in Kenya and other parts of the world, you find that most roads have not been made accessible. And you might find that there are a lot of trenches. You have to spend more money, maybe to pay for an assistant to help you maybe cross over in other places, so that it can enable you to really be able to access such a service. Becomes more costly or expensive. And at the end of the day, there's no one who is providing you for these extra costs, which persons with abilities incur. And when you look at this, you find that we really need to look on how we can really address issues of climate change through a twin track approach, which I call in that we look at that aspect of whereby, number one, we really need to ensure that we develop programs, designs, which are more exclusive to persons with abilities directly, because they have been left behind at a more terrible speed than other population. Secondly, we can also develop programs alongside others without disability so that we can be able to educate them. Thirdly, is when research is being done or when policies are being developed, they become more inclusive by involving persons with abilities meaningfully and their organizations, so that they can be able to enable people or enable that participation. And with the aspect of looking at being a public policy think tank, we look at issues around public policy making, and that one we really need to look on how we can have invited publics, whereby we have people, citizens who are facing these experiences, being able to talk about their issues, not people talking on their behalf, because this one has been one of the commonality issues. And lastly, one of the issues is that when people look at issues of disabilities, most of the time we look at the physical bit of it and we forget about other impairments, like persons with psychosocial disability, persons who are blind like me, persons who are deafblind. So we really need to have a multifaceted approach so that we can enable more persons with disabilities to access such information, and also being enabled to participate maybe in the institutional way of building the policies or being able to implement when they're being developed by different partners and stakeholders. And this one will really enable us to play alongside others, not just to be left behind. I believe that through changing these experiences of informing people or having such forums like this dialogue, they will also promote that awareness, which really needs to be taken to different policymakers, different stakeholders, whether they are individuals, organizations, civil society, and government, so that they can be able to take up this issue about climate change seriously. And I believe that through participation or through these processes, we can empower more persons with abilities so that they can become the voice in terms of climate change. And as we look on the COP28, I believe we can really enable persons with abilities voices to be heard. You remember the September Africa conference, it was like persons with abilities were somehow left behind. And that one really melted my heart, because we were not enabled by the organizers to participate in such forums. And lastly, I believe that through climate change, we can solve most of the world problems which we are currently facing, and they can contribute towards even economic empowerment. And through that, I can tell you that when we are able to support persons with abilities, whom I believe they are the largest economy after America and China, we are able to empower a society and be able to spread the wings like a web. Thank you very much. And I believe that I've spoken enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for that wonderful insight. And not only did you share about the challenges that you have experienced, you've also captured for us the different challenges of the different people living with disability face. And as well, you've given us the opportunity and even introduced to us on how we can engage you in ensuring that you are part of the climate change processes. So we look, just stay online, as I'm sure there might be comments and questions that will come to you after this session. Next, we'll hear from Lucy Mulombi, who will share on her real life story of living with physical disability in a changing climate. We remind the different online participants that you are able to share your questions and comments in the chat section. So thank you, and we welcome Lucy.
So good afternoon, everyone. Once again, my name is Lucy Mulombi. I am a grassroots disability inclusive feminist, identified as a woman with a physical disability. Currently, I am the chair of Kakamega County, a disability caucus that brings together organizations for persons with disability. We advocate for inclusivity in all spheres of decision-making processes, and where I also do a lot in terms of activism on climate change. Now, I want to acknowledge the efforts that are being made to include women and girls with disabilities in climate change discussions. I'll mention a good practice where recently 2 women with disabilities from my county were appointed chairpersons of a climate change committee. This is an indication that for many years, our advocacy has started bearing fruits, though in small installments. Unfortunately, as the way my brother Paul Mugambi mentioned, these women with disabilities could not attend the first African Climate Summit in Nairobi, as they could not raise the funds to attend the summit. What does this mean? This means that the voice of the grassroots women and girls with disability will always be absent in critical climate change discussions. It also means that the recommendations made during the summit were rather mechanical. For instance, there were some recommendations that people to go out and plant trees. What about the woman with disability who doesn't even have a title deed, who doesn't own land? There were recommendations to switch to clean energy. What happens to that woman with disability from the grassroots who uses charcoal and cannot afford clean energy because it comes with a cost? This therefore means that the grassroots women with disability will continue to bear the greatest burden of climate-related disasters. Back to my real life experience, as a woman with a physical disability, it becomes very, very hard to cope with the ever-changing climate situations. For example, when it rains very heavily, as a woman with disability, it becomes very difficult for me to even access or board a public vehicle. You can imagine when it's raining, when the rain pours down in torrents, even the person who is supposed to wheel me around cannot, maybe, for example, be very much accommodative to wait for me there outside as we are being rained on. And when a bus comes, those without disabilities will be the first to board the matatu or the bus. So the woman with disability, you'll remain there and you're subjected to a lot of torture. As we speak, from where I come from in Kakamega County, we still have a lot of issues with poor drainage system. So when even you are walking home from work or from doing your business, it becomes very difficult, especially on accessibility issues because the pathways are very muddy, the pathways are very slippery, and even the surfaces are very much slippery. This means that we'll have to incur huge medical bills in treating the injuries. It also means that you will fail even to report at your place of work. You will fail to go and carry out your normal businesses. So climate change has really continued to affect on us very, very much negatively. And this is also affecting our access to other services like healthcare services. And also that is why as we celebrate the 16 days of activism in Kakamega County, it is one of the hotspots for gender-based violence, and women with disabilities are really affected most because of climate change related issues. Allow me briefly just to do a few recommendations on issues around climate change. I'll recommend that for us to really handle issues around climate change, issues around data is very, very much important. Today morning, I was watching news, and it was being reported that to date, around 76 people have lost their lives due to the El Nino. Unfortunately, nobody's talking about the disintegrated data. We need to know how many women, how many persons with disability have died, how many women with disabilities have died. I have been seeing pictures of people being evacuated, and it was ringing in my mind. Does it mean those households don't have persons with disability or the women with disability? It means that media chooses what to report, because at the back of my mind, I know in many, many households, you will not miss the women with disabilities. So we need that data, because data will help the county governments, data will help the national government to plan for women with disabilities. I also want to recommend that we need mitigation procedures that are inclusive, because if we are not inclusive, then it means the women with disabilities will continue to suffer in silence. And finally, I just want to tell the society needs also to be mainstream. For example, when it's raining heavily and you see a woman on a wheelchair trying to board a vehicle, let us give the women with disability support. Let us help them around, because they are human beings, and disability issues should not be the issues of persons with disability, but disability issues should be issues for the whole society. For together, we can change this society. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy, for that great, insightful session, especially on highlighting the importance of sex disaggregated data as we report on climate change and the different effects that people are experiencing. We are also like to highlight the part we have said that it's not a people with disability issue, that it's a whole society issue, and it's very important that we collaborate with you or people living with disability so that we are able to make solutions and provide programs where there's equity in the society. Just stay online, as we may have more questions coming up, coming after this session. So after this, I would like to welcome Josephat Irani, who will share with us on the opportunities of people with disability in changing climate. Before Josephat speaks, we'd like to apologize to the French-speaking, sorry, somebody is making some drawings on the program. Request that you don't draw as it's shared to everyone. So before I just first speak, I'd like to apologize to the people from the French-speaking countries. Unfortunately, our interpreter was not able to, there was some technical hitch. We do hope that by the next conversation dialogue that this will be sorted. But I would like to take this moment to welcome Josephat to share with us the different opportunities that different people with disability may have in climate change. So welcome, Josephat.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and I wish to thank Paul Mugambi and Lucy Morobi for giving us some very critical insights that will also talk to the
By Jordan
opportunities
Steele John, the
that
Australian
will be
Greens,
presenting
Parliament House,
for
Canberra.
discussion. There are many opportunities that exist, some that have been utilized already by persons with disability, but some which are
Because my parents told me I have to
that
be
have some
responsible.
shortcomings
Because my
or
first
some
coach told me,
challenges.
you can do this.
Because my teacher helped me see the choices.
Hello, I don't know
Because
whether
my
I'm the
coach
one
treated me
person
like
hearing
everybody
some
else.
problem.
Because my
Hello?
boss showed me how to do a good
I don't know
job.
whether it's just me
Because I'm
having some background. Hello? Hello?
You can
There was
continue now,
some-
it's
We
okay.
can hear
Hello?
you.
Kind of
We can
feedback?
hear you.
Oh, thank you very much.
Just go
Thank
ahead.
you very much.
Yeah, okay.
There are many opportunities that existing. I'll just thank you very much. I'll look at I'll have a broad view, the national perspective, also in international perspective, and I'll start with what we have the legal and national frameworks that address the highest opportunity for me in terms of institutional programming, the national, the legal and policy framework. And for Kenya, we start with the constitution. It's very outgoing about issues of disability. Specifically, Article 54, subsection 1 mentions deliberately about involvement of persons with disability and their rights. We have Vision 2030 for Kenya. We have the Climate Change Act of 2016. We have the Climate Change Action Plan of 2018-2022. We have the National Policy on Climate Finance, and I mentioned this specifically because it talks about integration of climate innovation into the design of investments, while the most vulnerable benefit. And it also goes on to talk about there is a disconnect between the government. Out of that discussion, somebody points out that there is a disconnect between government and community planning due to lack of consultation with the community-based institutions in planning processes that may leave out the person's disability. But the opportunity of that particular policy is there in spite of its shortcoming. Again, we have the Public Finance Management Act, and I will say why it is important, together with the Public Procurement that is supposed to act, because it gives a provision for persons with disability to participate in the procurement process in government by giving a 30% window to generally women, persons with disability, and young people. So that is a dedicated law. And then we also have the Disabilities, Persons with Disability Act 2003 that eliminates the areas that persons with disability must and should be involved in informing the development process and trajectory of this country. So to us in Kenya, are also part of the international community laws. We are also guided when we are talking about disability and climate change. We have the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Person with Disability, and that is very important because it talks about critically about the rights of persons with disability. And for us, we focus on how it relates to the issues of climate change. We also have the Paris Agreement on climate change specifically that requires state parties to respect, promote, and consider their respective human rights obligations, including the rights of persons with disability when addressing climate change. So that becomes critical to us that we have the international community working with us to check that we actually are doing what we said we would in climate change action involving persons with disability. We have the United Nations Framework, sorry, that addresses the concerns of persons with disability. Allow me not to get into details, but only to highlight that that is a very key international instrument in climate change agenda, and particular involvement of personal disability in state parties. And then we have the SDGs and the Agenda 2030. I mentioned the SDGs because I come from a gender background, so I look at it from a gender lens. And then, therefore, when we look at disabilities, we look at an aspect of what we call gender equality and women empowerment. And for the SDG specifically, SDG number 5 talks about empowering women and achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls. And when I mention, I like emphasizing the all in the SDG to respond towards what Lucia said about the spaces that allow, especially for women with disability, to be left out. But the SDG talks not just about women empowerment, but all women and girls. So that becomes important. Also, the Agenda 2030, the African Union Agenda, those that are leveraged or anchored in law and policy. Secondly, we have the employment opportunities. Now, let me focus on Kenya. We have some government initiatives that the government has implemented policies and initiatives to promote employment of persons with disability. So I hope I'm reaching you. Persons with disability, and we know not just in the public sector, and there are set quotas for persons with disability government jobs to ensure inclusivity. This is in terms of targeting what we call diversities and people who are vulnerable as a focus point. And we know that the government, for example, has set aside a caveat that every recruitment should and must have not less than 5% of persons with disability, considering the whole continuum of diversities in recruitment. The private sector also has some important initiatives through institutions like KEPSA, where some companies have embraced inclusive hiring practices and have programs to provide inclusive initiatives to provide accessible workplaces and accommodation, some of which has been mentioned by both Paul and Lucy. The shortcomings are there, but the opportunity to create greater spaces for participation in opportunity employment and making employment spaces accessible are there. Then in education and training, we know the Kenya government embraces inclusive education programs, and efforts have been made or are being made progressively to promote inclusive education, ensuring that persons with disability have access to quality education at all levels. And we know that special schools and units within mainstream schools cater for students with the various disabilities and vulnerabilities. In addition, vocational training, and as we move toward private, vocational training programs are able to equip persons with disability with the skills that enhance their employability. And these programs focus on various fields, including agriculture, technology, and craft, so that they can address what, for example, technology through education training can address some of the issues that fall, as I highlighted, and which is called techno-ableism. So this cut across all the opportunities that we have. So besides opportunities in education and training, we have opportunities in entrepreneurship and business. And the government, working together with the stakeholders and the partners, where we have some organizations and government agencies providing support for persons with disability interested in starting their businesses. This has included training, deliberate training, mentorship, and financial assistance. In addition to this, to support entrepreneurship and business, the space for space and access to credit has been expanded. Initiatives that facilitate persons with ability to access credit and financing exist and are being ring-fenced to enable them to establish and grow their businesses. For example, the National Development Fund for Persons with Disability over the years has kept increasing the amount of money required to support persons with disability that have organized themselves into groups and networks. We have the Women Enterprise Fund that also expands spaces for women with disabilities become included in those interventions. We have the Youth Enterprise Development Fund. We have the National Government Affirmative Action Fund. And important for us is the 30% affirmative uh, 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 fund in procurement, affirmative opportunity, procurement opportunity in all government procurement. And currently we have the Hustler Fund and the cash transfer. All these not just to cushion them in their current predicament that comes with disability, but also become a launching pad for them to move to entrepreneurship, business opportunities to support themselves and their family. Then the persons with disability have a great opportunity in advocacy and representation, and I'm glad this issue has been addressed by Lucy. Irrespective of the challenges that exist, because we have greater spaces provided by the law, including public participation in programs at the county level through influencing CIDP and annual work plan at the county level, and also to do advocacy work. And Lucy about persons, not just women, but women with disability. But I think gender activism supports every person that has disability. So we have that advocacy and representation, but also inclusion in decision making. And I'm glad that I think this is one of the lessons learned in terms of opportunity that we had two people, persons with disability, that were included or appointed in climate change function in the county. So participation in decision-making level, not just nationally, but we are looking at inclusion of persons with disability in national and international initiatives. Yes, yes, please. Hello,
Okay,
can you hear
1
me?
minute. Yes, 1 minute
Hello,
to
can
go.
you hear me?
Yes, 1 minute to go.
Okay, okay. Then we have thank you winding up in sports and recreation. We have accessible infrastructure. They have to influence and opportunity to influence. Technology and innovation has been exhausted by the speakers that were before me. And then general social inclusion program, inclusion in disaster preparedness and response, which again have been brought out very clearly. And these are just some of the opportunities that exist within our communities, within our society, and provided by government and our partners, which we need to advocate for persons with disability to take up and consume so that they can become part of the national development agenda. Thank you very much. Hello? Hello?
Yes,
I
yes, we can hear you. Thank you. Thank you, Josephat, for sharing with us, especially sharing for us the different laws from international to national to regional to local, and how they ensure that there's inclusivity as well as protect and ensure that the different climate actions being designed for the nations and the different communities ensure that they include people with disability. And thank you for even sharing on different ways that people with disability can also benefit from the different engagements at the national level as well as at the local level. So we are going to move on to the next section where we have listened to our great speakers. So I welcome anyone with any question. You can please raise your hand using the icon on hand. Then I'll be able to see, and I'll be able to give you 1 minute. Each one of us, any person with a question, I'll give you 1 minute to speak and ask your question. And please, as you ask the question, please highlight the name of the speaker that you'd like the question to be addressed to. Thank you. So welcome, Monica, to kindly ask your question. Monica, are you speaking? We can't hear you.
Hello. Can I proceed now? Hello?
Hello, we can hear you, Monica.
Yes, my question goes to the presenter who just left now. My concern is about the PWD registration, especially at the community level. I've just discovered that even the money that is being given to the severely disabled people and the needy is not reaching out to all the people in the community. I come from Baringo, and this has been reported. So they have been told to go to Cabernet, and if they have special other examination to be done, they have to go to Cabernet, and you see it is very difficult for them to even access those services for them to be registered. So how can you help? Thank you.
Josephat, would you like to respond to the question?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. And about the forms that are required, I think they are previous provided by the National Council for Disabilities, including accessing the financial support requirement. I believe there is an officer assigned to a region or a county to work on issues of persons with disability. And I think any information that is required, the county commissioner or the office of the county commissioner usually have all the information required on a county that they are located, where they can provide government information. And because that office of the county commissioner is does the coordination work of the national government. So it's a link. Where you don't find the officer, the National Council of Persons with Disabilities officer, then that information will be available. But also through the network, there are networks, and I think the National Council of Persons with Disabilities has a website where some of those codes can be downloaded. So kindly check. Hello, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Josephat. As we wait for another question, I would like to pose a question to Paul. I hope you can hear us.
Yes, I can.
Can you share? Okay, thank you. Can you share with us the different challenges you may have experienced when you have been invited to a workshop or a meeting, and how different organizations and programs can ensure that as we book meetings, as we book workshops, as we plan for different platforms where we'd like to engage you, how can we ensure that we have considered your physical participation? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. Accessible venues, first of all, you begin by that virtue of asking persons with disabilities who are attending the meeting whether they need any particular reasonable accommodation, maybe whether in terms of alternative mode of communication, whether it is in braille, large print, sign language interpretation, or whether that place is physically accessible. Because even persons who are blind and persons with the physical disabilities, most of the time they cannot access some of the places because maybe of the slippery environment, such etc. Another version is also supporting a personal assistant, whether they are sighted guide or caregivers or persons with abilities who can support a person with disability so that he or she can be able to participate well in such a meeting. So the first point of entry is asking the individual what are the reasonable accommodation which can be put in place. Then from that aspect, because different individuals have different needs, that's why you can be able to really understand the needs which I've tried to discuss about them, and also given that when you are having that communication, it can really open a door of how you can enable persons with a disability to participate much better. And maybe also to say to the people that I have a YouTube channel called Disability Sausage Media, which you can access and get such information. And the question about registration, maybe Wambo, you can allow me to respond to a bit. Yesterday,
Okay,
Yesterday, the National Council launched the e-citizen, where you can do self-registration if you have a disability. Through that, you go to your e-citizen, and then you can upload your medical report. But a warning, that one does not make you tax exempted through being registered through the e-citizen. That one just says you have a disability. So from that is when now you can be able now to follow other steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for sharing with us the insight. And I think I'd like to clarify further on what Paul Mugabe shared about the registration. I think that case is on Kenya, or the people from Kenya. Maybe we'll be able to hear from the other countries how they engage and register with people with disability. I welcome Faith Gatere. Your hand is up. Please ask your question. Faith Gatere, can you hear us? And still, are you able to raise? You say you're muted.
Okay, good afternoon.
Good
Yes,
afternoon.
no, my name is Faith Gatere. I come from an organization called Differently Talented Society of Kenya that creates awareness and advocacy for children and young adults living with the neurodiverse condition, that's autism, CP, and other neurodiverse conditions. My question is, how inclusive are the forums that we are having? We are having climate change discussions, and you find that in forums or in the meetings that I attend representing the organization that I come from, they are not inclusive. Like I know of youths who can speak for themselves, but they're autistic and I've got other conditions, but you find they're not invited to these forums. You find that whenever they make remarks, people will just take them for granted. They say, how hawako sawa, or they'll say they cannot make decisions on their own. So we need to come out clear, advocate, and create more awareness on inclusiveness. Thank you.
Thank you, Faith, for sharing. I think that's a comment. It was not a question.
Yes, that's a comment, sorry.
Okay, so you shared about inclusivity, ensuring that we are inclusive. Any more questions? Okay, I'd like to give each speaker a 1 minute chance to give their parting shot, and well, so that we are able to end today's conversation. So I welcome Paul for a 1 minute parting shot.
Thank you very much, ICASA, for this noble cause, because at the end of the day is that we know that according to the SDG, we should not leave anyone behind. And as believers of reducing ableism, I think this is the first meeting whereby I've not had any euphemistic words being presented, whereby sometimes we refer to people with disabilities with maybe different, able differently, special needs. So I believe this is one of the beginning whereby we are having proper usage of language terminology, which is a great initiative. And I hope that we can continue the same spirit and also get more climate change makers, and also develop a situation whereby you can also have disability champions who are championing these processes of climate change, and it can work through maybe a lot of empowerment and also reaching out to the grassroots organizations, so that at the end of the day, we can be able to collaborate and co-design programs which are more inclusive and which can enable persons with abilities to be part of the dialogues which are being developed. Let's change life at a time. Thank you very much. God bless you all. Let us reduce ableism in order to include everyone in the society. This is a vision from Disability Sausage Media. Thank you.
Thank you, Josephat, for your good insights and parting shot. I welcome Lucy to give you a 1 minute parting shot.
For me, I want to say that let us create inclusive spaces. Let us continue working together, take action, and create solutions that can really address issues around climate change. And I believe that alone we can do little, but together we can do so much. Thank you.
Thank you for reminding us that we need to work together. I welcome Josephat for the 1 minute parting shot. I think Josephat may have dropped out because of internet issues. So we'll go ahead and proceed with closing the conversation. So we thank you for participating in this online conversation. We welcome you. Again, this is a continuous conversation where we shall engage on how to ensure that we include people with disability in climate change. And we hope to partner and work together in identifying these different challenges and opportunity. So this is also to inform you that this conversation will be uploaded on ICASA YouTube page, and we shall share with you the link after this meeting. We shall have our next conversation mid-December. We shall share with you the date, and the time will be the same time as today, 3 p.m. East African time. And we hope by then we'll be able to even have French translation. We also encourage anyone who would like to be a guest speaker in these online dialogues on people with disability and how we can continue to engage them in climate change. Please contact us at info@icasaafrica.org. This same information will be shared with you as we share with you the report of this meeting. So thank you, and we hope to see you in 2 weeks' time. Okay, and bye.